Hi, this is Ashley,
And this is Kristen.
and this is 1,000 Miles of True Crime. Hi, everyone. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, how are you?
I am so happy. I hope you guys are as happy as I am, but I've done it. This is finally going to be the last episode on John Wayne Gacy. So, yes, yeah,
Woo!
a celebration. I am so I have been telling Kristen all week, like I'm so over this. I never want to hear Casey's voice again. I'm just done. But I'm excited about this episode because I think the last one was really rough. So if you haven't listened to the other ones, not a problem. I think we're gonna start off where a lot of John Wayne Gacy stuff starts off with the victim that really took him down and got him busted. So we get to kind of now go over the downfall of John Wayne Gacy, which I'm very excited to cover.
This will be my ultimate favorite part of all three. So
Yeah. Uh, Before we start, I actually just saw something cool on TikTok. I don't know if you guys are big Ashley Flowers fans and follow her on TikTok like I do, but I just finally saw she came out and everyone always asks her who does she think is guilty for the JonBenet Ramsey case? Like, do they think that the parents did it, or do you know what she guessed? What she said? You want to take a guess?
I'm gonna guess that she doesn't think that it was the parents, but surprise me.
Yeah, she thinks it's an intruder. She went with the intruder theory. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone cares about that, but I was really excited.
Did she like state why or whatever? I mean,
It was like a quick video, but she said like after going through all the evidence and she brings up like how she definitely doesn't think the brother did it and that we should just leave him alone. So I respected it though. But let's get started. I wanted a little see me. I'm like prepping for this episode with Gacy, just getting back into him. I gotta get in the mind frame. But you want to like start off with a fun fact? Do you have any idea why he named his clown name Pogo? Like why his alter ego is Pogo the Clown?
I have absolutely no idea, and I'm really actually kind of scared to find out what you're gonna tell me right now.
It's because he's Polish and he's always on the go. Pogo.
Well, that makes total sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little Gacy humor for you there. That's how he came up with the name. So let's dig in. So on December 11th, 1978, Gacy is actually at a pharmacy called Nissan Pharmacy, and he's giving him a quote because remember he would remodel pharmacies. That was like his specialty. And while he's there, he's like measuring things and he's chatting it up. Apparently more with the female employees he claims, but he mentions to them that he actually will pay $5 an hour to his employees, and they're making around like 250. So this is big. Imagine it's like double the money, and he takes off and he's heading home. He's kind of done for the day. He actually has one more appointment to run, and he realizes he forgot his appointment book. So now he's got to go back. And when he gets to the pharmacy, he notices this boy outside. He's actually got hit with a snowball, and like some girl hit him with a snowball, and then he heads into the pharmacy. So while Gacy's heading in there, he says, "Hey, I heard that you're interested in some additional employees. That you hire young people." And this is actually Robert Piest, and he was only 15. He was a sophomore in high school, and he was desperate to get a car. He had the perfect his dream vehicle was a Jeep, and he's turning 16 soon, so he was doing everything that he could to raise the money for it. And he's an athlete. He's like an honor student. He's really close and he's very devoted to his family. He has a brother and a sister and his parents. And he's been working at this pharmacy now for a few months, and he's only making 250 an hour. So I think he's like starting to realize like I'm probably not going to get my dream car at this rate. I'm only working part time here, and so he's willing to do what it takes to try to make some more money. So he goes up to him and he says, Gacy says, actually, I remember you when I was here earlier. I noticed that you were you know, you were working hard. Even when the other employees were kind of taking advantage of the fact that the boss was talking to me, I noticed like you kept stocking things and stuff. So, you know, I could definitely be interested in you working for me. He says, you know, why don't you actually, Rob says, you know, hey, but I gotta get back in, you know, I don't want to get busted talking to you. And Gacy says, you know, I respect the loyalty that you have. Like that's just another plus for me. So, you know, I will stick around and are you getting off soon? And then we can talk about it. And he says, like, oh, great. Thank you so much. So Rob goes back in, and well, he goes in. You know, Gacy goes in to get his appointment book, but then now he sticks around and he pretends that he actually needed to stay and like measure some additional shelves or some stuff like that. And so let's see. So then he's actually about to get off. So Rob's about to get off, and his mom is the one who's gonna pick him up, and she shows up 10 minutes to 9. And so she's talking to the employees, you know, she says hi to her son, and then she goes to the card section and starts just kind of moseying around the store. And so Rob goes up to her and says, like, hey, I'm off now, but I have a chance at getting a job with a contractor, so I'm just gonna run outside and talk to him. And she's like, okay. And it's actually, she wants him to hurry up probably though, because it's her birthday, so they're supposed to be going home to do like cake and ice cream, you know, the whole deal with the family. But her son seems excited about this, so she's like, go on. And he heads out there, and you know, he says it's gonna be quick, but she's just browsing through the store. She notices like this seems to be taking a very long time. She asks some of the employees, you know, have you seen Rob? And they're like, no, I mean, I know he went outside to talk to a contractor or something, but I haven't seen him. Did you check outside? And she had already checked all around the building. She could not find him. And so she starts to freak out, and the store eventually closes. And, you know, that's the last time she'll ever see her son alive. Yeah.
On her birthday.
On her birthday. And imagine you think your son's just running outside, like he's going to be right back. Also, Gacy admits he was in the store when she walked in. Like he fully knew that his mom was just waiting for him in the store.
So that's really callous to me, because it's almost like, are you asking to get caught? Because now you've actually visually, like, you've seen this kid's mom, and you're still going to take that risk of taking him.
Yeah, I don't know if you. So I actually was thinking about that. Is he just getting like so ballsy, or is he almost like ready to get caught? Because obviously they know his name. Like the owners have all of his information. They have his home phone number, all of the stuff. You know, he's been working there all day giving them a quote. So that's really ballsy. Well, I mean, he also, you know, took the neighbor's son, the cop neighbor's son. So I guess he's probably just that ballsy.
It's just, it sounds like he just, I don't, it's not carelessness, because he didn't want to get caught, right? Like we know that he didn't want to get caught, because like what is it? I that's confusing to me. I'm sorry.
I mean, around this time is also when he started letting some victims go too. So I mean, if you just think about it that way, like I don't know if he really thought he was above the law at that point. You know, he's always telling these stories. Maybe like he really started to believe his own hype. Because you'll see, I don't even know if I think I don't go into it, so we can talk about it now. But like there's one victim who he just kept using chloroform on him, like over and over again, tortured him all day. But this guy knew who he was, and he just left him abandoned in Lincoln Park. Like his face was burned from all the chloroform, and he got liver damage from it. And he even like tracked down Gacy, goes to the cops. He says, I was raped, I was attacked, and like gives them his information. Like they go to his house, and he was arrested for it. But you know, again, this was just another one of those, like he claimed it was just a lover's quarrel, and it's just some kid now versus Gacy, who's this prominent, businessman making millions. So,
I mean, how many victims are there that he let go or that like reported it to the police? Like, what's that count at?
who knows? I mean, like how many didn't report to the police? I have no clue. Because, I mean, they definitely got a few. I think they got like 3 to come forward, like when they went to court. And
That
survived, yeah. But I mean, for example, he claims a lot of kids that he was picking up were like sex workers. So, I mean, we know there's an even lower report rate for that. We're talking about men in the 70s. So, I don't know. God knows how many victims are out there. Also, like, he'll later like make comments about dumping bodies in forests and stuff. So, who knows how many people he actually. I mean, we talked about this, like, I think on both of the episodes, that we doubt the 33 that he'll get charged for are his only victims.
Yeah, I 100% believe that there are more than 33. And I feel like we'll never really know. They're still unidentified victims right now. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. So let's go into how was Gacy able to even pull this one off? How did he take Rob? So he gets him outside and he tells him, like, hey, get in the car. And Rob says again, like, hey, I already mentioned that my mom's here, so I'm really in a hurry. And he says, just let her wait for a little bit, because you should come with me, because I need you to sign all this paperwork. Like, you can't be my employee without following the proper government procedures. And what's a better birthday present that you can give your mom than literally doubling your salary? Plus, I'm going to give you a bunch of benefits. Like, your parents are going to be so happy. And somehow he just convinces him to get in the car and go with him. He says it's only going to be like an hour and he'll drop him off at home, which is still crazy to me. Like, wouldn't you still have to run in and tell your mom's literally just walking through the pharmacy looking at cards and stuff? Like, she's already been in there for like 10 minutes waiting for you.
I was literally just going to say the same thing. Like, even still, no matter what the time frame is of it's going to take an hour, it's going to take 30 minutes or 20 minutes, I'm still going to go back in and say, hey, mom, I know it's your birthday, but I really want this job. So I'm going to go with this guy and, or follow me there. Like, come on,
Something.
But it sounds like there was some desperation there too, maybe from Gacy. Like, this is an opportunity. I'm trying to seize the moment, and whatever I can do or say, and obviously it worked to get him to go with me, I'm gonna do and say. And that's just so messed up.
Yeah. And Gacy says that he kept talking about that Jeep. So he kind of knew his sore spot too, right? Like, he knew exactly what to say, exactly what he was looking for. And yeah, somehow we got him there.
A predator, a true predator.
Like, it's sad to say, but it's almost impressive that you got. And again, he's not that I'm saying, like, oh, if you're on the honor roll, you're a genius, but you'd think you'd be smart enough to not leave your mom sitting in a pharmacy waiting for you. But he got in the car. He's heading to Gacy's house. They pull up and he notices right away there's like these giant bushes in front of his house, and he like comments on how it's like, yo, you must really like your privacy. And they head into the house and he notices all of these like clown pictures and little clown trinkets. And he even brings it up. He's like, what's this about? And he's like, oh, I'm a clown. And he's very excited to tell him. And he's he's telling him all about it, how he's pogo, how he goes to the hospitals, how he does all this stuff. And he then like points out that he has this full stocked bar, and he's like, hey, you want a beer? And Rob's like, no, thank you. Again, it's my mom's birthday. I don't want to be drinking. And he's like, one of the big parts about this interview here is for me to see if you're going to be a big fit, like a good fit for my company. And even on the ride over, Gacy's, as always, he's like talking himself up, but he's talking about how like, oh, I party with my guys all the time. Like, this is the party house. Like, we work hard and then we have even more fun. And so, again, Rob gets it. He's like, well, I better go with the flow. I better do what he says. So he gets the beer. They're sitting there drinking, and he says, what about the paperwork? That's what we're here for. I thought you were in a hurry. We're both in a hurry. And Gacy's like, oh, see, like all work, no play kind of thing. And he's giving him a hard time about like, you can't be taking yourself this seriously if you want to work on my crew. And so Gacy walks out of the room and he comes back and he does have the paperwork, the proper procedures that he's going to follow, but he also has handcuffs. And yeah. And of course, the way he describes it, he's like hopping around. He's like twirling he's acting like a clown. He's twirling the handcuffs. He's doing the whole 9 yards. And he says, "You want to see a trick?" And again, Rob's just trying to get this job. So he's like, "Sure. So what you got?" And so he's showing him the handcuffs and he spins around. And when he comes back around, he's handcuffed. And so Gacy's hands are behind his back and he says, and that, he's like, "Oh no." And he's showing him, like, "See, they're real handcuffs. I can't get out." And then he does like a little spin again and he takes the handcuffs off. So of course, Rob's like, what is that? Like, how did you do that? And now he's not concerned at all. Because at first, the guy walks out with some handcuffs. He was a little uneasy. But now he's like not afraid of the handcuffs at all, right? It's an actual show. It's like a good time. And so we asked, how did you do it? And he goes, "Well, hey, why don't I just show you?" And so he handcuffs Rob. And he gets him handcuffed. And so Rob says, "Okay, great. Like, what's the trick?" And he's trying to get out of him. And of course, what does Gacy say? He says,
I gotcha. Shit.
Yeah, basically that's literally what he says. He says, "The trick is to not be a stupid little person." And like his whole demeanor changed. He's like, suddenly he's not smiling. He's not like the fun clown. And he says, "Only a stupid person would think you could get out of cuffs without a key."
I am actually literally frightened right now to
Yeah.
think of wanting to like being a young kid and wanting to like learn how do you escape handcuffs. It sounds like Rob was like genuinely like, "Cool, show me how to do this." Like, yeah, and this is all a ploy and it works. And then to demean his victim into like, "You're an idiot because now you're
Yeah.
here."
Yeah, now I got you.
I am frightened. I am terrified right now.
Yeah. And he whispers to Rob, "Do you have the key?"
Oh. And these are his words. Like this is Gacy's account of, oh my gosh, Ashley.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have Rob's account. So this is all what Gacy says happened. These are all his details. And so while this is going on, all of a sudden he gets a phone call. And so he kind of walks out of the room a little bit so he can hear, because he doesn't pick up the phone, but he hears it on the answering machine. And it's actually the owner of the pharmacy. And he's calling to see, he's like, "Hey, have you seen Rob? And like, please call us back if you've seen Rob. We're trying to find him. We're trying to locate him." And so then he actually comes back in and he tells him like, "Hey, don't worry. Your mom is looking for you. She knows you're here. They just called." And then right after, Gacy gets another call. And this is from Rob's dad. So he comes back in and says like, "Oh, hey, don't worry. I just heard from your dad. He knows you're here, so we can take our time." And he didn't sound mad at all. And obviously Rob's freaking out for all the right reasons. He's freaking out, but he's telling him like, "Hey, just because my dad sounds like he's not mad doesn't mean that he's not mad. And I need to get home. They're getting worried about me." And so then finally Gacy's like, "You know what? You're right. We better get you home. Your mom's looking for you." And so he even takes the handcuffs off of him. And he thinks he's getting a gift to go home. Gacy's gathering up all his stuff. He's like grabbing his appointment book, grabbing his wallet, grabbing his keys. And he even laughs and says, "Oh man, I really thought you were going to kill me." And, Gacy laughs. He's like, and then he says, "You know what? Hey, why don't you let me show you one more trick before you go?" And he does the rope trick, and he puts like a rope around his neck and he strangles him to death. So as he's strangling him, he, obviously Rob's already been really freaked out. He realized he was in a bad place, obviously, as soon as the handcuff situation happened, he had just been trying to get out of there. So he was already still being really nice to Gacy and like kind of playing along with everything. And I'm sure in his mind he was like, I will never come back here. But Gacy gets the rope around him and he's slowly killing him. And, Gacy's admittedly just sort of laughing out of control while this is happening. And as he's dying, he's telling him, "You're so young and stupid." So then he kills him and he shoves paper into his mouth so that fluids don't leak onto his floor. And then as this happens, he gets another call. And this is actually from his aunt saying, you need to get to the hospital. Your uncle's dying. Like he's on his deathbed. He's about to die.
Wait, whose uncle? Gacy's uncle or?
Yeah, sorry, Gacy's uncle. It's
okay.
So Gacy's aunt calls. And he had known that his uncle was sick and in the hospital, but like now time is of the essence. He needs to leave. So he drags Rob's body into his bedroom, actually puts him on his bed. Then he cleans up the 2 beers. He finds Rob's parka and he goes through the pockets and he finds a receipt for some pictures. Do you remember this part?
No.
At all? Okay, so I'm jumping ahead. Later, they're gonna find this. The cops are gonna find this, and they think, oh, this somehow probably ties him back to Rob. But they later find out that there's a girl who's working at the pharmacy who thinks Rob's cute, and she was working at the front, and the door was opening and closing all day. It's December. It was freezing, so Rob lets her use his coat for a while, and then she decided to like stick that in his pocket because she thought like he would find it later and like it would be like this cute thing, or you'd have to like go back and talk to her about it.
I think I'm now remembering this. You talked about this last episode about a receipt, right?
Oh, did I? Possibly. I know it's all merging together now.
Okay. Okay.
But it was just this cute story, and like I've heard her tell it so many times, and it was just really upsetting because it just confirmed everything once they found that receipt. But I'm jumping ahead. Now he's still at the house. He's cleaning up. He actually throws that receipt away in the kitchen garbage, and then he strips Rob naked, bags up his clothes because he's going to dispose of them later, and then he showers and he shaves and he gets ready, and he heads out this cold night to go to the hospital to be with his family. But by the time he had gotten there, because now it took him like over an hour to get ready, his uncle had died. And they'd already taken him to the morgue, and the family had left. So he goes to his aunt's house and actually finds that they're at another family's house that's like on the same street. So he goes there and he's there for a while, but then he tells them like, hey, I'm really sorry, but I have to go. I have a really early morning. He actually has an appointment at his house at 7 a.m. because he missed an appointment because he was killing Rob. And he says like, I'll be back. I'll call my mom and my sister. I'll take care of all of that, but I need to leave for tonight. So he's heading home and he's like actually upset with himself. He's like, oh, I got to get all this stuff done before tomorrow morning, before this guy shows up, because he had this appointment with him at 7 a.m. So he just goes to sleep with Rob's body right next to him.
What a piece of shit.
Yes.
Sorry.
What a piece of shit. And I do remember bringing this up because I think because he jokes about, when he was talking about how people thought it was like weird, the whole situation when he was, remember when he went to Vegas and he was working in the board?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he like brings that up, like, oh, people think I was like sleeping with him. And then he brings up the Rob thing too. And he's like, they think I was like, sleeping with him, but it's not that weird. Like, and he makes some joke about like the living's who you got to be afraid of, not the dead. Yeah.
This man is so fucking disgusting. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's like, it and his demeanor about the whole situation. Like, it's just so matter of fact. It's like you telling me what you had for breakfast. And so he gets up and he realizes, like, damn, I got to do something with this body. I can't just leave it here. There's people heading to my house right now. And at this point, he knows the crawl space is not an option. That's completely full. So he actually takes Rob's body and he's struggling because at this point, he's been dead for like 18 hours. Rigor mortis has definitely set in. He's heavy, even though he's a small kid. But Gacy throws him over his shoulder and he carries him up to the attic and he leaves him up there for a while. And Rob's family's obviously concerned. They're out of their mind with fear. They go to the police department and they file a report. And this is an honor student and he wanted to be an astronaut. Like, this wasn't your typical runaway. I mean, I'm not going to say like it's not his typical victims, because I think a lot of his victims were, they're now portrayed as if they were like these, these are just these horrible kids, or, they were on the streets and things like that. And a lot of them weren't. A lot of them did have families that care about them. But Rob's family was like very insistent. Like, he had zero reason to run away. And like, if you were going to run away, you wouldn't do it with your mom waiting for you to take you home, right? Like, you're going to try to get as far away as you can before anybody notices. And the police are they're sort of suspicious too. Like, they're taking this more seriously than they've taken a lot of other ones in the past. So they tell them like, hey, we're filing the report and everything, but we suggest that you go home. But obviously they're going to check out this contractor, right? So the cops call John Wayne Gacy, and John acts like he wants to help them. Typical John act. He's like, I admit I saw a lot of people at the pharmacy. He says he didn't really talk to any boys. Maybe he talked to one about seeing if there's additional shelves in the back or something. But, he completely denies ever talking to anyone about a job. And he admits, like, when I was leaving, I think I saw some boy taking out the trash, but he insists, like, I'm trying to help you here, but I don't have anything. Like, I had just left to go home. And he's like stressing, like, my uncle actually died. And, so he's really just playing innocent and the victim. And like, I want to help you. I really hope the youth are important to me. Like, I hope you find him. But he never admits to anything, obviously.
My stomach is literally turning, Ashley. It is turning. Yeah. How can you be so cold and like just
Well, your stomach's turning. Like, at this point, don't you think as Gacy you would be very concerned, and wouldn't like your stomach be turning?
I feel like he had it all figured out. Like, he knew the right things to say. He had been in these positions before. He knew what to say to his victims to loyal, get them to believe him and follow along with him, go to his house with him. And regardless of if they were sex workers or not, it doesn't matter. Like, this was not his first rodeo. Like, he knew what exactly he was doing. But to know that there was a history, to know that police knew about like people reporting things about him, and how could they have not looked further into it, especially with multiple people reporting it. And even if they got away, even if he was able to talk his way out of it, like, come on, they all can't just believe him.
Like, how many times are you just gonna believe him?
I don't understand.
Yeah. And I don't get it either. Thankfully they're starting to take it more seriously, but obviously it's too late. Too little, too late. But uh, Gacy just moves on with his day, and literally he says, like, well, what's the point of worrying about it? Like, if the cops are gonna bust me, they're gonna bust me. Might as well not, not shed a tear over it yet. So he really thinks he's smarter than the cops. Like, you can see this throughout, like, this investigation and stuff. He thinks that he's smarter than them, and luckily the cops, again, they aren't just like, oh, well, we talked to him and he says he didn't see anybody. They're taking it seriously. And the Piest family, they're not letting this go. Like, they're showing up at the police department every day, the whole family, his siblings, his parents. And at this point, they do run a background check. Finally, they finally do it. They run a background check on Gacy, and they find the sodomy charge from Iowa. So, like, their red flags are all up.
But so I have a question for you. Okay. Do you think that Gacy, up to this point of now they've run a background check, which they should have done however long ago, and like, do you think that he was indeed smarter than the police? Or do you think it was just the time? Like, it was just a common thing for people to just kind of disappear and go off and start a new life somewhere else just because of the era of what it was of the 70s, and or do you feel like the police just didn't care? Like, was Gacy smarter, or were the police just like, what's another missing boy?
I think maybe both. I think Gacy played on the fact like that. I think that's why he picked a lot of his victims, because he didn't think the cops were going to take them seriously, right? Especially ones that he didn't kill. Like, he really assumed that nobody was going to believe him anyways, and nobody did believe him. So they were kind of they kept reinforcing that. So it's really sad to say, but he finally went after, like, the golden boy, so the cops were forced to take it seriously, So I hate to say it, but yeah, I think that was a big part of it. But I don't know. Definitely didn't look good either way. So they're really suspicious, and they're determined. They want to talk to this clown. So two detectives from the Des Plaines police, they show up. They're knocking on the front door, and some, like, smart ass kid, Michael Rossi was a friend of Gacy's, but also one of his employees. He's like, hey, he's not going to be able to hear you. He's in the back of his house. And he's giving the cops a hard time. He's like, what's this about? Like, you have a warrant? He's like playing all that stuff. And they're just kind of like laughing at him. And they have, like, two cops stay out there with him. And they go to the back of the house so that they can, like, try to get Gacy's attention. So they finally, they're knocking. Gacy comes to the door, and they tell him, like, hey, like, we have some questions for you. We want to, hear about what happened the other night when you were at the pharmacy. And he's really focused on, like, hey, I need to go. My uncle just died. Like, that's what I was doing that night. I was at the hospital with my uncle. I was with my family. And the Detective Kozenczak, what is his name? It's spelled like pickle. I'm so sorry, you guys. I, like, practiced that and everything. I was like, I am not going to call him Detective Pickle. We'll just skip that for now. Pickle. You should Google that for me. But wow, I'm really sorry, but they're not easily convinced. Like, these are good detectives, and they're not just gonna turn around and walk away. So they're really pushing him, and he's getting mad. He doesn't like this. And then they're like, you need to come down to the station with us so that we can get your statement. Like, that's really important. And he's, like, lashing out at them at this point. He's like, do you have no respect for the dead? And he's like, I need to plan a funeral. I'm waiting for a call from my mom from Arkansas because we're trying to plan all of this. And they're like, well, why don't call your mom right now? Just get her on the phone right now. Like, take care of it. So he tries to call her, and he knows she's not going to answer. And he's like, see, I can't go. I can't leave. You guys leave, and I will come. I will come to the police station but I need to take care of this call first. But I'll come and like, they're like, well, how long is that going to be? And he says about an hour. So finally they agree, they leave. And they leave the they can't take him at this point. They don't have any proof. So they need to get him, and they're just trying to get a statement. And his lawyer will explain later that like they just try to get your statement because they want it early on so they can use it against you later. But they leave, but they don't fully leave. So one of the cop cars leaves, and one of them is still sitting outside, like making it very clear, we're watching you. And so Rossi comes in and he's like, what'd you do, man? Like, what's going on? What was that? And Gacy's like just playing it up like, these stupid cops, like, you know, they're here because some boy went missing. They need to just be doing their job and they need to leave me alone. And Rossi's like, I don't know, they were asking me a lot of really weird questions. And Gacy's like, of course, they're cops. That's what they do. And, you know, because he's so big and bad, he's like, I'm going to get their badges. Like, I'm going to call their bosses and all this stuff. But then he's like, you know what, it'll be fun. We should mess with them. You want to mess with them? And so they both get in cars and they book and they leave really quickly. And so then, you know, the cop like chases him down and he tries to keep up with them. And this is going to be a common theme throughout the rest of the story, is that Gacy drives at like 90 miles per hour all the time. He just drives like a madman. So they both take off, they lose him. And once Gacy's like pretty confident that he's good, they're gone. He heads back home because he's got work to do, right? He's got to get that body out of his attic. So he gets home and he goes up in the attic again and he struggles to bring Rob's body down, but he brings him down and he wraps him up in an old rug, and then he sticks him into his car. So he sticks him in the trunk. And then he leaves. He's like really checking around. He feels pretty confident there's no more cops there. And he books for it. So he's actually taking the highways and he's heading towards Joliet. Okay. So what do you think about all of this so far? How would you feel the cops were just sitting outside your house and now you've put a body in your trunk?
I mean, it sounds like he's still calm to some degree. Like, I don't know how. But to do all of that and know, or maybe be suspicious that you're being watched, you know that they're onto you, but you still do it. You still go and wrap this body in a rug and put it in your trunk. Like, how he was able to do that, I don't know. I mean, I wonder, did he have accomplices in any of the murders? Any, or even the disposal of the bodies or whatever. Like, you know, yeah. I want to know how involved the other people were, because I feel like there is absolutely no way possible that he could have done this by himself. Any of this.
Yeah, it's a lot. And it seems sort of strange, like Rossi just goes along with the flow always. And again, maybe these are still young guys. He's paying them a bunch of money. Maybe that makes it a lot easier to sort of like turn your cheek. But at some point, I mean,
there isn't enough money in the world. I'm sorry. There isn't enough money in the world. I'm not a male. I'm not in my 20s. I didn't grow up in the 70s. I don't know like what type of childhood this Rossi kid had or whatever for him to maybe have thought that this was normal to some degree. But I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's hard to understand any of this, right? So he's driving around now. You know, I said he's heading towards that way, and he actually finds this safe. It seems like a safe area. It's kind of wooden. He's on a suspension bridge, and you should hear him explain this. He makes it sound like this is the most annoying chore that he has to do. You know, it's like now he has to actually clean up. And he complains about it. Like, oh, then I had to like drive like an hour away. Yeah, exactly. It's so annoying. But Gacy gets him out of the trunk. He throws him over his shoulder. and then he just tosses him over the bridge, and he ends up basically leaving him in that river. But this is a cold night. This is December in Chicago, and he's now got to get all the way back to the police station because he was supposed to be back there in an hour to leave the statement. So he's doing, again, 90. He normally drives really fast, so he's going even faster. He's trying to get back. And he ends up he's actually by like the Hinsdale Oasis, if you're from the area. And he hits a patch of black ice and just goes spinning out and ends up in a ditch. And he's doing everything he can to like rock himself out of the ditch, but he's not budging. And eventually somebody comes along and says, like, we're going to call you a tow truck because you're not going to get that out of there. So he's really reluctant. He doesn't want any of this reported or anything, but a tow truck comes, gets him out. At this point, because he's trying, he's done all of this stuff and all these activities, he's like covered in mud. And he's all dirty. So he shows up to the police department at 3:20 in the morning and says that he's there to speak to the detective. And they're like, he waited here, which he felt was more than long enough. He was confident you weren't coming, so he went home. And they like highly suggested that he come back in the morning. So he's all annoyed that they're not going to interview him and take his statement at 3:20 in the morning, and he heads home. So he comes back the next day. So it's December 13th now. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say, what do you think his statement would have been had they taken it at that point, that early in the morning when he's just gone through all this, I guess, all these obstacles of getting the body out of the attic and in the carpet and in the car and to the river and then the ditch and the mud and the tow truck? Would his statement have been different than, I wonder.
He definitely was probably exhausted. He'd only slept like 5 hours maybe the night before. Now it's 3:20 in the morning.
He's running on fumes and probably a little bit of adrenaline. I wonder.
And honestly, if we think about it, he has a lot going on. So he's doing all of this. Plus, he really is planning for a funeral. And he's like taking his aunt and his cousin out to dinner and stuff like that. He's like caring for his mom and trying to like comfort her and get her here. And he's still running his company. So like this man is like about to snap. He's gotta be, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it. But okay, so what happens? So they tell him to come back. Does he come back?
He comes back. He's because Gacy is the type of guy who's going to be helpful. And so he shows up there. It's December 16th, and he makes his first statement to the police. And they question him for 3 hours. And finally, he calls his lawyer. This is like his business lawyer, though. He's not used to, getting murderers out of jail. And the lawyer gets on the phone, and he's like, let him go. And obviously, the prosecutor is like, yeah, okay. And just sort of hangs up. He's like, he doesn't feel threatened at all. So they make Gacy, they like type out Gacy's statement and they tell him to sign it. And he says like, I'm not signing that until my lawyer gets here. And his lawyer shows up and he's like, kind of like reads the statement and it's him saying he's innocent and everything. And so the lawyer's just like, just sign it so we can go. And his later lawyer will be very mad about that. That is, I guess, just not what you're supposed to recommend doing. But so he signs it, and then he gets all his stuff, and he's gonna leave, and he notices like, where's my keys? And they're like, oh, we have your keys because we're actually searching your house. We had a warrant. And so that was like the whole reason they were keeping him there. And he'll later say like, I felt threatened. I felt stuck there. I felt like I was under arrest or something. And of course the cops are like, oh, we couldn't get him to shut up. Like we were concerned, how are we going to keep him there? And they were like an hour and a half in, we were like, oh, never mind, this guy's going to go all night. And
he was just shooting the shit, like just talking about whatever.
Yeah,
himself.
Yeah. What his favorite topic, John Wayne Gacy, and all of the great things that he's done for the community and how he knows everybody and they're all gonna regret this, all this crap. He's just going on, and they're just like taking it in, taking notes. And but so finally he's gonna leave, but he can't leave. He doesn't have a car. Because they took his car, and so he's like, how am I gonna get home? And they look at his lawyer. Lawyer's like, So yeah, the lawyer takes him home, and he gets there and he realizes they've taken his pickup truck too. So they've taken 2 out of 3 of his vehicles, and they've searched his house. So let's see, what did they find in the house? Because the cops were.
This is the initial search, right? So he's coming home. This is the initial search. Please tell me that they found some form of there being a crime committed.
Well, they searched the whole house and they found some evidence. So they found the receipt. They found that photo receipt, which makes up for them. They want to say for sure it's his, but Gacy was at the pharmacy. He could have dropped film off, you know? So it wasn't like an instant connection to him. And, you know, they found some other stuff too. They more found like some rings and stuff that they felt weren't his. They found some clothes that definitely wouldn't fit Gacy. So some strange things, but nothing that was like, they didn't find the bodies in the crawl space, literally. So unfortunately now they're frustrated, but they have to leave. They've covered everything that they could under the search warrant, and they're kind of done. They're not done. They're still very suspicious.
I mean, they is there mention of the odor or the smell of, you know, obviously.
No, at that point, there's not. They don't really smell it. They do go down into the crawl space. They don't notice anything. There's no like really fresh grave, right? Like his last 5 bodies he's dumped in the river. So it's not like there's not a body. So they're not finding what they're there to find, but they get this really uneasy feeling. They also they say how, you know, the house is really clean, it's very meticulous. They obviously comment on all the creepy clown stuff, but they're finding some suspicious things, but they're not finding exactly what they need to be finding. So obviously Gacy realizes, like, I need to find some representation. This lawyer that I'm using isn't cutting it. This isn't his area of expertise. So he actually hires Sam Amirante, and this was actually his very first client. He had just opened up his own law firm. So can you imagine your very first client is John Wayne Gacy?
Just dig your own grave. Shit.
Right. But he, you know, he's not brand new to being a lawyer. He'd been the chief public defender of Des Plaines. So this did put him in a good position. He already knew the prosecutors. He knew a lot of the judges. He knew the mayor of Des Plaines. So he thinks that's probably why Gacy called him, because he felt he had a good chance. But even he says he's not 100% sure how that all came about and how he ended up getting the call from Gacy. But when Gacy calls him, he says, like, hey, can you figure out why the Des Plaines police will not stop following me? And he's like, yeah, sure, I'll take the case, I'll figure it out. But Sam wanted to learn everything that he possibly could about Mr. John Wayne Gacy. So he had him come to his office, and he wanted to figure out, like, he was just trying to figure out what makes the cops think you're guilty. Like, there's got to be something there. And so he has him just like go through his whole life, and they sit there and they talk for 6 hours straight. And, you know, Gacy, he doesn't confess at this point, but he spilled a lot of stuff, and obviously it comes out about about what had happened in Iowa. So, you know, Sam's got a pretty good idea of like why the cops would think it was him. And the next 5 days, the cops are just relentless. Like, they are following Gacy everywhere he goes, the cops are there. And they trailed him so much that they talk about how, like, they had to kind of like remind themselves that, you know, about him, you know what I mean? Because they were almost having like a good time with him sometimes. And they would say, like, sometimes he would act like they were his friends or like, hey, these are my bodyguards. And then like the next minute he'd be all pissed off that they were following him and be like swearing at them and everything. So they definitely got both sides of Gacy. So the one time there's these two guys, they're trailing him, and he's gone into this bar. And so they decide like, let's just do it. Let's go in. We're gonna follow him. So they follow him into the Moose Lodge. So watch him, you know? And so do you know what the Moose Lodge is?
No.
Okay. Here, let me tell you. So in the early years, the Moose Lodge was there to serve the modest goal of offering men an opportunity to gather socially, to care for one another's needs, and celebrate life together. So, in other words, Gacy freaking loves his boys' clubs, right? Like, he just can't get enough. But, so they go in there, and they're sitting there. Obviously, Gacy sees them coming in. And so what does Gacy do about the situation? He buys the two cops beers.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. So then, like, they're treading on new waters here, and they decide, like, we'll just buy Gacy a beer. And then, you know, it's kind of going back and forth. And then before you know it, the bar's closing, and Gacy's like, so do you guys want to go get breakfast? And they leave the bar and they go to his favorite breakfast place and they have breakfast and they're like just shooting the shit. Like they're just talking. And, you know, Gacy's literally acting like these are two old friends of his.
The audacity.
Right. Like he kind of has no shame. So he talks their ear off, and that night ends. You know, they're switching shifts. Maybe he likes some of the cops and not the other ones. I don't know. But at this point, they've been watching him for so many days. He's starting to lose confidence. You know, he's starting to act a little unhinged. He's starting to drink a lot. He's popping Valiums, you know, like they're candy. And he's just all over the place. And we already talked about how he's a speeder. And now we're talking about how he's doing all this and driving. And the cops kept wanting to arrest him. And they're like, no, because they felt like their case was going really good. And they didn't want them to have like any sort of a case for harassment or anything like that. So they just had to watch him like very dangerously drive around. And so he's going like 90 miles an hour on Valium and heads straight towards his lawyer's office. So he goes to see Sam, and he ends up telling Sam everything, like gives him all the details. And Sam admits at this point he's pretty fucked up. Like he's messed up, but he's just going on and on, nonchalant, like he's talking about like Christmas presents he's going to be buying or something, and he's going through victim after victim after victim after, like we did it last episode. I don't need to tell you guys. Poor Sam. I'm like, I couldn't imagine him doing it in the room with him. And Sam can't do anything. That's his lawyer. He's
right.
Yeah. So he can't do anything. And Gacy just walks out the door and leaves. And now, you know, now this guy's world is like shattered. He says he goes home and he takes a bath. He's going to try to like scrub, not a bath. I'm sorry. He takes a shower. He takes a shower.
We would have taken a bath.
I cried in the tub, like with a fucking bottle of tequila. Like, it's probably what I'm going to do tonight.
Get it off me. Yeah.
And he said like, obviously didn't really work. He couldn't scrub the evil off of him. But he said he kept getting total psycho vibes. Like he just felt like his world was shattered. So he was just waiting for someone to like come out with a knife and just start stabbing him. And he doesn't trust the world anymore. But he can't do anything. He's just stuck. He can't do anything. The cops are kind of suspicious though. They think that Sam knows something because the way he's acting and like he's watching his client a lot more. He's really concerned that Gacy's gonna kill himself, because he's just talking about like taking control and then those kind of things. So they're kind of watching him, but you know, he's limited. So again, these are like Gacy's friends. Like he's inviting the cops in and all this stuff. And so he would invite him in to like go to the bathroom and stuff like that. Like, he'd be like, oh, it sucks. You guys gotta sit out here with no bathroom and, watch me. You might as well just come in, use the bathroom. And what this night specifically, he'd even made them food. So remember, he was a good cook. I can't remember. I want to say he made fish or something. So he's making them. Yeah. Yeah.
I know that those officers are regretting those meals that they accepted from Mr. Gacy. I guarantee you that they are regretting that decision.
I'm sure. I think it's also like they were trying to get as close as they could to him. So you're gonna eat the
I get it, but at this point too, though, still the police are it's just about Robert, right? It's not about all these other victims. So, I get it. They don't know the extent of the catastrophe of who this person is.
Yeah, no one suspected this level of evil.
Okay, so they're eating fish at his house.
Yeah.
So
then one of the cops is like, hey, do you mind if I use your bathroom? I gotta go. And it's December in Chicago. The heat's gonna kick on at some point. So he's in the bathroom and the heat kicks on. And all of a sudden when the heat's coming out of the vent, he's like, this is the moment we all hear about, that he was like, I smelled death. I've smelled death before. I know that was death. So he leaves and says, we got to get a warrant. I'm telling you, there's bodies in those houses, and I've smelt it. And so they go to a judge with that little information, and they're able to actually get their second warrant. And when the judge is signing it, he said, now go get that SOB. And they're also there now. They want to pick up Gacy, but they need a good reason to pick him up. And I already mentioned they don't want to get charged with harassment or anything weird like that, or something that they can't really hold him with. So they're hoping to get him on something a little bigger. And they're following him, and he goes into a gas station, and he just throws these 3 joints at the kid behind the counter. And they see this. They see him do it, and the way he describes it is he knows these cops are following him, and he realizes that he shouldn't have weed in his pocket or something like that. But right in front of them, he throws it at them. So when Gacy leaves, the cops go into the gas station, and the kid's like, this isn't mine. I didn't buy it. I swear, I don't know what that was about. He just threw it at me. And they give it to the cops. And so the cops are like, well, I think that's enough. We have enough to charge him with. So officially, they picked John Wayne Gacy up on distribution of marijuana.
Why did he do that?
Again, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if it was just like enough's enough. I mean, he's already now confessed to his lawyer. I think he knows like the jig is up. It's maybe with these people following you constantly for 10 days, it might just like literally get to your head, and like your world's about to crumble.
So I also have another, I guess, thought of, we know like the amount of people that we know of, right? That he was taking and doing this too. What if those 10 days that he couldn't do anything, it was just getting to him?
That could be it. That's a good point.
Like, I'm losing my shit. It's been too long or whatever. I can't fight the urge or whatever. Like, I think it may not have just been, he knew that things were closing in on him, but it was also that he couldn't, I guess, act on his impulses anymore, because he knew if he did, they were really going to know what he did. They're going to have to work for figuring it out. I'm not just going to give it to them. I don't know. Like, I just feel like that could have been it too. Cause I mean, then why wait the 10 days,
Yeah. It's a really good point though. Like, that's probably what he did when he was really stressed out. And so now he can't even do his like de-stressor. And this is probably the most stressful 10 days of his life. So he's also on a bunch of drugs and he's drinking. So God knows what he was actually thinking. She could have just been messed up. Like, oh, wait, why did I bring this with me? With the cops following me. Here you go.
That is true too.
Yeah. you know, when he describes it, he's like, oh, anybody would have did that. You know, who knows? What a nutcase. But yeah, so they arrest him. They're able to arrest him. They put him in jail, and now they're gonna go to his house. They're executing this warrant. They search the whole house, nothing. They still can't find anything. And they realize like they gotta really get in that crawl space. They gotta take a better look. And this evidence tech goes down there and he sees like these three puddles, and he flashes his light over there. When he sees them, he notices that there's all these little red worms, these like thin red worms. And as soon as he flashes the light on them, they like go back down into the ground, like into the muck, this dirt. And right away he's thinking those worms have to be eating something. This isn't right. So he kind of goes over there and he sticks his shovel in the ground. And right away he hits something really hard, like a brick. So he pulls it back up and he like digs it up. And immediately he finds a shoulder blade. So he knows something. And so right away he calls up and he's like, I found something. And they're like, did you find Rob? Did you find Rob? And he's like, no, there's no way this is Rob. This body's decayed. It's, you know, it's complete. It's a bone. Like there's no way it's him. So obviously at this point they're like, oh no, this is even bigger than we were anticipating. And pretty quickly, like without any struggle, they're able to identify that there's three bodies there of young boys. Like just right off the bat, like within a few minutes of digging, they're able to establish that. So Gacy asked, did you get to the crawl space yet? And they're like, yeah, John, we've been in the crawl space. So he says, okay, I want to talk. And of course, his lawyer's like, no, like just shut up. Like just shut up. But Gacy's so full of himself that he's like, oh, if I'm helpful and if I tell my story, he thinks he's going to somehow talk his way out of this. He's like very convinced that he's somehow going to get like a lighter sentence, or like he literally says out loud that he doesn't think he's going to get convicted.
He's insane. Like he was absolutely insane.
Yeah. And so Sam's sitting there with him, but you know, I'm sure he's just like, it's the point. Like, why even have me here, right? You're not taking my advice. But the cops are obviously very eager. A lot of them pile into the room to talk to him. And so he starts confessing, and he starts with he calls it the Greyhound bus boy. But that was his first murder, at least that he confesses to that day in 1972. And then he goes on to describe one after another, you know, how he likes to do it. And he just lays it all out, tells them all the victims, and he, you know, brave detail. He's just talking and talking and talking. And at this point, to be honest, they're kind of hoping that he's just exaggerating. Like, you know, some killers will confess to things they didn't do, or just they like to try to seem bigger. And they're like, this guy is like known for trying to seem like he's huge. So they're hoping that's the case. But, you know, as they start digging in that crawl space, they realize like, no, like everything he said is true.
Oh.
Yeah. And they can't even like, it's not easy to move around down there. So they realize like they just start taking out the floor so they can, you know, better get through there. They're having to take out walls. Later, they're going to have to dig up cement, all this stuff. And, you know, he's just confessing. He's even like drawing maps for them. He's showing them where they're going to find all the bodies. When they're there, they find a bunch of different badges in his house. And so he had confessed, like he drove a vehicle that looked like a cop car, and he would use badges and stuff to get people home. He confesses that a lot of them were, you know, sex workers. He claims a lot of them were there for his money or there for his drugs. Like some of them came willingly, and he's just going through them. He's like bragging about them. And they're just trying to comb through everything, and they get through all of the bodies. I mean, there's so many bodies, but they get through all of them, and they still can't find Robert Piest because he's not at the house. And so they have to go back to Gacy, and he's, you know, Mr. Helpful here, he tells him, well, he's not above ground and he's not below the ground. But he finally confesses that he's in water, and they tell him, you know, he's in the river so that they can at least go look for them. So the media, the media is obviously out, right? This is a huge story. So they're all camped out in front of this house, Gacy's house, and they're just watching all of these bodies every day. Like every day at the end of the day, towards 5 o'clock, they bring up all the bodies that they were able to, you know, get for the day. And they're just covering all the stuff. It's being covered around the world. So all these people are here. But the media, and more specifically the public, absolutely hate Gacy's lawyer, Sam Amirante, because they just can't even understand, like, how could you defend this monster? And someone vandalizes his dad's car. And this is like his dad's dream car. It's this Lincoln Continental. And they took a screwdriver and they wrote on it. They wrote, your son must be a fag because no one but a fag would represent a fag like John Wayne Gacy. I'm really sorry. That was actually hard to say. 3 in a row. That was brutal. I'm so sorry, you guys. Horrible world. But obviously, Sam's really frustrated. Like, he's devastated for his dad. He didn't want his dad to have to go through this. And his dad actually never wanted him to be a lawyer, so it's really not helping. Like, even his dad's like, I cannot believe that this is your first client.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, you could have been anything in the world. This is what you're gonna do.
And then your first client, as you're opening your own practice, is John Wayne Gacy of all people.
Yeah.
And you know he's guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. The media and the people were horrible. I mean, people were showing up at Sam's house, and his wife was like, who's Sam? And just trying to play dumb and like try to keep people away. So what are you gonna do? Now it's Christmas Eve, and he has the family over. So this is Sam, the lawyer. He's got his whole family over for a very traditional Christmas Eve Italian dinner. They've got all the fish and all the seafood. And Gacy actually calls Sam on the phone while everyone's there, and he apologizes to Sam about his dad's car. Like, somehow he had found out about this, and he was really upset about it. And he's like, please tell your dad I'm really sorry that he's going through this. And Sam kind of jokingly is like, well, actually, he's here if you want to talk to him. And Gacy's like, yeah, put him on, you know? And so Sam's telling his dad, like, someone wants to talk to you. He's like, who wants to talk to me? Like, who would call me here? And he's like, Gacy wants to talk to you. He wants to apologize. And Sam's dad's like freaking out. He's like, I don't want to talk to him. And then at that point, everybody's kind of like teasing him, you know, like his wife and stuff. They're like, come on, just talk to him. Hear the apology. And they're egging him on. And everyone's laughing at him. And so his dad finally is like, fine. He's not happy about it, but he's like, give me the damn phone. And he gets on the phone and he says, he's talking to him, and they're going back and forth for like a minute. And then he gets off the phone. And he says, you know what that asshole said to me? He said, I'm so sorry, Mr. Amirante. This world is just full of some jerks. I can't believe that someone vandalized your car just because your son is my lawyer. But you know, there's a lot of nuts out there. It's insane.
This guy, I mean, actually, this guy is ridiculous.
Yes, and he was dead serious. Like, he could not see the irony in saying that. But, it's sorry, I know, like, give you a little funny story. That was one that I just kind of couldn't get over. But yeah, like, this is the kind of stuff he would say all the time. Like, he could not associate the things he was doing as being insane.
He sounds very dry. Like, his humor or like his sarcasm is just extremely dry. Like, he's meaning to be funny, but not really meaning to be funny because he's serious.
Yeah. Later he'd be doing an interview, and the guy comes in and he's got shoes on, and he looks down and he said, oh, like, you came in here with shoelaces. You must be brave. Like, he just makes these weird jokes. Like, I doesn't laugh about him at all. Like, he just sits there with a straight face. And then, like, this guy's got to conduct an entire interview. So he's like, you want me to show you the rope trick?
It's almost like he wants to be memorable or remembered by his raunchy comments or, you know, some one-liners. Like, it sounds like he was really good with one-liners too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oh my gosh. You're brave to come in here with shoes on, shoelaces.
With shoelaces. Let me show you the rope trick.
I can't even. Oh.
Yeah. Now they're gonna head to court. Obviously, they have to go to court, and what are you gonna argue, right? At this point, what are you gonna argue? So Sam's just like, we gotta plead mental illness. Like, we have to say that you're crazy. We got nothing else. And he's not exactly happy about it. Like, Gacy does not want to be known as insane, but he goes ahead and he pleads mental insanity. And he is examined by all of these psychiatrists, and they're all coming back with different opinions. Like, they don't know what to exactly say about him. But one would testify that he thinks that he was projecting his anger towards his father abusing him and, like, abusing him in the basement, and he was just, like, acting it out over and over again. And he said it was like he hated himself so much that he was, like, killing himself each time. But it was.
Well, does that classify you as being insane though? I mean,
well, some people would argue, like, well, you have to be insane to kill that many people. But if you look at, like, how you can't be insane if you're so easily able to cover it all up, and then
you're planning it.
You're planning it. You have a successful business, like all of these things that if you're truly insane, you couldn't actually do. So
I want to add to that. Was he really planning it? Is there proof that he was planning it, or were all of these spontaneous, like, just things that just he saw an opportunity and he's like, I'm gonna do it? Or was there any planning? Because I mean, he was keeping their belongings. He was like, I remember all the, you know, evidence that they found in his house. Like, well, what does that mean? If you know you did something horrible to these people and you kept kind of a keepsake, I feel like you have to be fully aware of what you're doing. You can't use or escape from the accountability of it by saying you're insane.
Yeah, I think some of it was random. I mean, like, he had never ever met Rob before that night. You know what I mean? So some of it's random. So I don't think it's like he's planning it out to the point that he's, like, stalking his victims. But I do think he would be like, oh, it's Saturday night, I want to go out and kill a boy, kind of thing. And then he would go hunting. So I don't think it was total, like, he just snapped insanity. I mean, I think there's some of them, like, remember that one guy who was like, hey, I'm here for my last paycheck, and he got all mad, like, oh, you think I owe you money? So I think some of it was just snap anger stuff, but yeah, I think a lot of it was planned out. And the prosecution did a very good job in this case of just really trying to, you know, fully represent all of the victims. And they would leave this, like, billboard of pictures up of them. So it was really sad. And they had a lot of family members and victims that survived come up and talk. So it was a lot to take in. I couldn't imagine being that jury. And the jury, they decided that he couldn't get a fair trial in Chicago or Des Plaines. Like, how could he get a fair trial anywhere?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they shipped these poor jurors out from Rockford, which it's like 90 miles away. They probably had to come. And so I don't know. They probably put them up in a hotel, right? I don't know.
I would think so. But I mean, who's to say they're not going to know what they were broadcasting this everywhere. So everybody knew.
Right. There's no way those jurors didn't know. But yeah, it was just, I think it was just really probably a very challenging, you know, court to sit through, and it went for months. So I mean, that was just brutal. They brought in a lot of people. Even Gacy's mom would testify on his behalf. So I mean, it was just It was all very bizarre. But for the closing, the prosecution, they actually brought in the crawl space, and he had this really dramatic closing, and he had all the pictures in his hand, and he just throws them into the crawl space. And he said you could like hear a gasp, and then it was just silence. So it was a good closing. Sam, the other lawyer, Gacy's lawyer, he actually said if it wasn't over before, it was over then. That was, he described it as theatrical and very good. He like admits that it was just a really good closing. So, they leave, the jury's out, and Sam talks about how he went back to the bar, he's going to get his first drink. And like, he pretty much puts his first drink order in, and he gets the call that the jury's back. It's in less than 2 hours. So he knows it's done. He knows he's guilty. And so no one thought, the jurors say like nobody went back and even talked about insanity. They just nobody believed that he was insane. They all thought he was guilty. There was actually something too. One of the, somebody had like slipped up and said something about how if they found him insane and he went to a mental institution, then he could actually potentially get out pretty quickly because he's not really insane. Like he's, you know what I mean? And they were stricken. They weren't supposed to hear that. That's not supposed to be true. That, they supposedly they could lock him up in a mental institution for the rest of his life. But I'm sure that was going through the jurors' head. Like, no need to risk him ever getting out. They wanted him locked up. So that portion was over, but now they have to go back for actual sentencing, which is challenging because they need to decide if they're going to sentence him to death, which I think would, in most circumstances, would be challenging to have to decide that. But I think after sitting there for that long, it's a no-brainer. Even the prosecutor was anti-death penalty, but he fully fought to get Gacy the death penalty. I don't think anybody was. Obviously, Sam didn't want him to get the death penalty. He thought he should be locked up for life, but they sentenced him to death, right? Like, obviously, they found him guilty for good reasons. And Gacy said that he felt like they did the right thing finding him guilty, but he felt like they shouldn't have sentenced him to death.
Well, sorry, we don't really care what you think, Gacy.
Right. Exactly. So once he's in jail, he starts doing pretty good for himself. He's doing all this research. He's looking into how he can say that his lawyers didn't properly represent him, and he's coming up with things for appeals. He starts denying all of the murders. He says like he's falsely accused, all this stuff, which is insane. And the reasons that he thinks that he should have been found innocent was that he says that they put him on truth serum once for more than 3 hours and he never confessed. He says he's a self-proclaimed good dad that doesn't believe in hitting. And he claims that he didn't kill anybody, but he was there for 2 of the murders and he helped get rid of the bodies. And that's the only thing that he claims he should have been found guilty for.
Oh, and so who did he say was responsible for the 2 other murders that he witnessed, or that he?
At one point, he did accuse 2 of his employees. And these are 2 of the employees that did help dig out the trenches in the basement and stuff, but they swear they didn't know anything about it. But and he'll point to some like bigger conspiracies, but he'll never give any names.
Where are those 2 guys at? Are they still alive?
They are. Oh, I think one of them died, but one of them is still alive.
Okay. Sorry to throw that at you.
No, and they were heavily questioned, and they sang like canaries. I mean, they gave the cops everything allegedly that they knew and stuff. So they didn't stand by his side. That could have been because they were helping, but the cops didn't seem to think so. And he also claims, like, you know, I told you he was like drawing maps for them and stuff where all these bodies were. He complained. He said that wasn't true, and he claimed that, like, you know, for example, with because they had to like dig up cement or like break up cement. He claims like they just asked me where the latest cement was buried, but they said William Kunkel, he's one of the prosecutors. He said who was there that day, and he said that he actually like spray painted how the body would look. He didn't do like an X. He actually did like a stick figure, and like that's exactly where they found Johnny Butkovich, and like his head was where it should have been and everything. So nobody's buying that he didn't know where those were. But him and, you know, his biggest lawyers claim that Gacy was so he'll actually get he'll get lawyers, different lawyers later on for some of the appeals, and there's a bunch of financial stuff too, like, you know, people start suing him left and right, obviously. And they claim that's one of their other big claims, is they claim he was out of town for at least 3 of the murders. I also think some of them we don't know exactly when they were murdered and when these people went missing. Like, we know maybe when the last time they were seen, but that doesn't mean that's the day they came across Gacy. But that's like his big claim. And while Gacy was in jail, he's still flourishing. He starts planning. So he's planning ways to basically make money. He starts painting, and he starts selling his paintings, and these things are creepy. But he had also started a phone line so people could call in and they could listen to him proclaim that he was innocent. And then he was about to sell his story for a bunch of money. So the state of Illinois quickly passed the Son of Sam law in Illinois just so Gacy couldn't get that money.
Yeah, you're not going to monetize this, buddy. Sorry.
Yeah. So on May 10th, 1994, John Wayne Gacy, he was executed, and so many people showed up to watch him die, and people were outside of the jail just partying and celebrating, and everyone was excited about it. Like, there was parades over this. People were very happy to see him go. There was not a big group of like anti death penalties out there for this one. Even they were like, let's just get rid of him. And his lawyers did everything they could to fight it. You know, even up until the last kind of moment, he assumed they were going to drop it somehow and he was going to survive it. But thankfully he did not. And they did reopen the case because, you know, they realized that there was still all these bodies unidentified, and they have, you know, they've been able to identify some more victims through DNA, but we know that there's still, there's still unfortunately several that have not been identified. And just one last thing was that, you know, some rich guy went and he bought up all of those John Wayne Gacy paintings and had like a big public burning of all of them. So, and that's it. And then John Wayne Gacy was no more. But unfortunately, I think, you know, he's still got a lot of victims out there that we don't know about, but also just those families and you know, everybody that still had to suffer with him.
Yeah, the reach of his just he was like a tsunami of a person, and I feel like he's not here anymore. He's impacted so many people's lives in such a negative way. I hope they figure out who these last final 5 victims are, some way, somehow.
I really hope so. You know, I think it's sad. I saw a lot of stuff because people are like, well, why wouldn't you come forward if your son or your brother or someone you knew went missing around that time? And a lot of people said like they didn't want to know. They didn't want to know that their son was a victim of that, or, you know, whatever. But then the other horrible part was a lot of them felt like there was a lot of stigma around like his victims being gay and things like that, and how he picked up a lot of people around like Boys Town and you know, from gay bars. So some people, I couldn't imagine that you don't want to have your son identified because you're afraid that people might think there's a chance he was gay. That seems so horrible. So I really hope that that's not what these five are unfortunately having to deal with.
Yeah, that's really sad. If that's one of the reasons that's holding them back from coming forward, that's really messed up.
Yeah, one of the families had said that that's why their parents didn't come forward, but the siblings finally did. So I just think that's just so tragic. I mean, to be sitting there and just be a number for that many years.
Yeah. Give your family member that peace. And then you'll have peace too.
Yeah.
Ashley, I know these last three episodes have been brutal for you, but I think you did an amazing job. I know that the second episode was brutal because you were talking about the victims, but I think it's important. That episode was, I think, an hour and 14 minutes.
Yeah, it was a
Just
long one.
think how long it would have taken or how long it took for John Wayne Gacy to admit to his attorney what he did. Like he gave all you know what I'm saying?
And
And
he would detail it all. He would, he'd want to talk about it. He enjoyed talking about it.
so I feel like that hour and 14 minutes is a righteous we're just showing respect to the victims. So no matter what, I know three episodes are rough, but there was importance there. So I think you did amazing.
Thank you. I really hope you guys all enjoyed it. I feel like this is another one where I could have done 6 episodes. I would not want to do 6 episodes. And that hopefully you guys will enjoy our next episode and I'm assuming you're probably happy to move on from John Wayne Gacy too. But I did forget to leave one of the worst quotes I heard from Gacy. So I'm going to go ahead and I will leave everyone with this. So when he was talking to the cops and they'd finally found all the bodies and everything, they actually quoted him saying he was very upset and he was angry. And he said, "Those were my bodies. They had no right to touch them." I'm just going to leave you guys with that. I hope you guys all have a great night and we'll see you in a couple weeks.